by uh, the security at airlines, and so I know that that is a result of being white. But I recognize that, and I think that that's an important point.
Okay. What would you answer to those who think that women pretty much have the same opportunities as men today, and now ask what are women still fighting for?
Well, all I have to say is look at the White House. I mean, besides the fact that we are still making 80 cents to the dollar, that pay equity and other kinds of workplace equities are dismal, and that it's estimated women would have to work 100 years just to achieve parity at the rate that we're now going with men on pay. I mean, that alone, and that's just plain old conservative liberal feminism. That's not even, radical feminism. We are still fighting the glass ceiling, big time. And Hillary Clinton's plight is a prime example. But you could just take a look at any kind of industry and business or government agency across the country, and you would see the same thing. It's still basically white old men in charge with the power and control. Women still daily face violence against them, face harassment, and I think the Me Too generation, Me Too hashtag, movement has helped to reignite consciousness of that plight that women still encounter. Women are still incredibly objectified in advertising and popular culture representations. In male ideology, and so we've got a lot that we still need to do.
Yeah, you just came up with all of those in 30 seconds. So, but yeah, I feel like for people, because they don't see it, like it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
And the other thing is, if people don't experience it personally in their lives, they think it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And that's what education has to do. It has to help us see that my experience is not the only experience.
Since any strong-willed woman tends to get the title feminist, how do you find yourself embracing this label and its connotation in your daily living?
One of the reasons I put it on all my syllabi is it gives me an opportunity to reclaim the term feminist for students. Now, in the women's studies classes, everybody, oh yeah, good, getting a feminist scholar, getting feminist. But in my English classes, it can raise some eyebrows and it can make some people a little uncomfortable. And that's a teaching moment. It gives me an opportunity to explain what that term really means and why it's important for them to know that that is going to influence how we study together for the next 15 weeks. So I try to reclaim it whenever I can and seize whatever incident requires my using it as a teaching moment, because most people are afraid of it out of ignorance. They really don't understand what the term means.
Fear of the unknown. How do you feel about where women's rights are going? How do you deal with that, and what is your biggest focus within the movement towards global gender equality?
I am encouraged by the activism. If there's anything that Trump has done that's been good, it's he's lighted a fire under people who have to understand we cannot be complacent about our democracy and about the way we treat each other. I'd like to see that kind of activism, particularly from this new generation of women, continue. And I like the idea that they're actually getting registered to run for office, and they're registering to vote, that it's not just going out and having a party in the street, but that they're actually continuing that politicalization to become a part of the electorate and to run for public office. I think if we can get more women in public office, we can change the culture. We can't have a culture change as long as the power is still distributed in the same hands. So I'm more optimistic than I was right after the election. I was just boohoo, depressed right after the election. But I think we have to stay on top of it, and we can't be complacent. I would really like to see us make another run at the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, because I think it will help for us to have inscribed in our Constitution equality. Next week we're going to talk about global feminism, and I think the thing is we've got to be careful about how we transport Western feminism internationally. I think that we need to do a lot of listening to what other women need, and to respect differences, and to support instead of telling them what to do, and to then be support for what they need to do in their cultures and their countries in order to achieve equality, or to achieve whatever they think will make their lives better.
If there was one feminist resource that you wish everyone could read or view, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Ay.
There's too many of them.
Yeah. Bell Hooks has this wonderful little book called Feminism is for Everybody. And so maybe I would start with that one, because I think, some of the more radical feminist theory is perhaps a little off-putting for people. And if you don't have any context at all for understanding liberal and radical feminism, then it's hard to read any one work. That book is particularly, she wrote it for a general audience, and so it isn't in your face, and it's very uplifting in that she demonstrates in that book how feminism benefits everybody. It's not just for women, but men also lead better lives, more enriched lives, when they embrace women in their culture.
I think that's what everybody should understand, because if they just think it benefits women, then men are more reluctant to support us.
One year in feminist thought and theory, I had an international student who was from China, a graduate student who was just auditing the class, and she was going to go back to China and teach, and of course they have some restrictions and so on and so forth, and she said, I'd like to share some feminism with them. What do you recommend? And I recommended Bell Hooks' book, Feminism is for Everybody, because I felt like it would probably not be too radical for that audience, and would not run into censorship problems. And she wrote back and said it was very popular with her students. So, yeah.
Is there a downside to being a feminist?
Yeah. My leadership is constantly called into question. I'm sure that I've missed promotions and opportunities that if I'd kept my feminism in check at the door, I might have been able. But then I wouldn't have been true and genuine, So yeah, you always run a risk of being censored by the power, by the status quo. You run the risk of being misunderstood by your colleagues. I would also say in Lubbock, being a feminist is extraordinarily isolating and alienating. I have no community here.
There's not a lot of people
like-minded. Yeah.
Is there anyone right now that inspires you or motivates you to action?
Well, I continue to turn to my good old second wave feminists who are still alive, and even those who have gone on, I continue to be inspired by their words. I'm inspired by some of the strong women in Congress, Elizabeth Warren, for example, Mazie Hirono from Hawaii, who's battling kidney cancer right now, but is just, doing her best. Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota, who are really trying to make a difference. I'm inspired by those young women like Emma Gonzalez from the Parkland shooting incident, who spoke so eloquently at the march for gun control. I'm inspired by my students who, in the face of all the obstacles and the difficulties we have here in West Texas, continue to study feminism and try to become better feminist.
And so, what is your advice for a young feminist about how to live a feminist life?
Don't give up.
That's a good one.
Don't give up. Be mindful that you will have times of struggle, but keep working through them. Build alliances, build community. I think too many of us second wavers are isolated, and
Why is that?
I think it's a result of being geographically where I am. If I were in New England, I wouldn't have this problem right now. If I were in California, I wouldn't have this problem. If I were in Europe, I wouldn't have this problem. But I think you all have learned how to connect better than our generation did across social media and that sort of thing. And so you might not need as much face-to-face community as some of us